Hello everyone, I am Kurz, this is Low Mana, and we've just had the first comic of 2017 hit. No, I don't count the gorgeous but story-light Winston Sun Wukong piece. And it's moving us a step closer towards realising Bastion's place in the Overwatch world. I said after our last comic watch that we'll be tackling these a little bit differently, so your opinions will be greatly appreciated. Not that they're not normally. Set as it is after Reflections, this is Blizzard moving the story forward again, away from the intrigue of Russia and Numbani, as well as starting down a path that is almost certainly going to see Bastion brought into the fold more. The core story is very straightforward on the whole. We see Bastion emerging somewhere in northern Sweden, scaring the locals into panicked action, even as the military disbelieve the reports. Torb turns up to deal with the problem, but after encountering the wandering Omnic, he realises that this Bastion is different somehow, and seems to make the decision to investigate how and why. That being said though, we reckon there's a few things folk may not have noticed. First up is the fact that this comic was foreshadowed in Reflections, the seasonal comic we got just before Christmas. While every hero was present, except you Orisa, sorry about that, you had to look harder to find Lucio and Symmetra, and harder still to see Bastion, so hard that most people missed him. If we zoom into the floor by Torbjörn's feet however, we see this image, which is remarkably similar, if not identical to this one here in Binary. Combined with the events of Destroyer, Torb it seems is still very much intent on his crusade to protect the world from his own creations, and hunts down all evidence that will help him do so, even at Christmas. As an aside, this also places Binary very much in the right now section of the timeline. The last and indeed only other time we've seen Bastion in person was in his own short, The Last Bastion, where Ganymede woke him up and helped him break his programming in the woods near Eichenwald and Stuttgart. And that's in the south of Germany. Here he is in northern Sweden. Best case scenario, that's over 1,000 miles away in a straight line, almost certainly more for the big Omnic. How did he get there? Why there in particular? And how long has it taken him? Bastion's profile has always indicated his preference to avoid contact with humans whenever possible, due to the fear of conflict, which can't have been easy throughout much of Germany, and potentially some parts of Denmark and Sweden along the way. The sea life would seem to indicate that at least some part of the journey was aquatic, and that makes sense for avoiding people, the seafloor of the Baltic not being known for an overabundance of people hanging around. How Ganymede would follow Bastion if he took that route for any length of time remains a mystery though. As for the why, he prefers the wild, uncharted regions of the world, and north of the Arctic Circle would certainly meet that need, more so than anywhere in Germany at any rate. And to how long? Well, The Last Bastion is without any real form of time reference, so we have no solid idea. Ganymede is still very much alive and kicking though, so it's unlikely to be too many years, but that's about it. Feel free to fill me in if I've missed any clues here though. Cheers to our Swedish friend Dexner for pointing this one out. This is northern Sweden. It's clearly summer, or at least late spring. Everything is very green, people are wearing relatively thin layers. This all points to June, July-ish. And yet, there are starry skies above the kids as they scurry out of town. If this really is northern Sweden, you wouldn't get dark nights as such, at this time of year, and if you did, you certainly wouldn't get starry ones. Could this simply be a mistake by the artist? Or does this hark back to other unsolved mysteries of the Overwatch world? Perhaps the weather phenomena that the eco points and folk like May were investigating has led to relatively dramatic changes that would explain this. That'd be a way to bring May back into the modern story arcs, I guess. The kids under that starry sky certainly recognised a Bastion unit pretty quickly, even one partially hidden by an oversized cephalopod. And they knew to be scared of it. They're too young to have any memory of the crisis, so this speaks volumes as to how the Bastion units are still used as symbols of the horrors that the war brought down on everyone. It makes sense really when you think about it. Bastions seem to have formed the bulk of the Omnic armies, at least in Europe, and given they're meant to have been wiped out, it's safe to use their image as a symbol of fear. You couldn't do that with the more humanoid Omnics after all, the ones like Zen. They're still very much alive and kicking, and the likes of the Titans and the large quadrupeds, they're simply too large to use. Bastions make the most sense. One of the stranger aspects of the comic is the fact nobody recognises Torbjörn. Indeed, the trigger-happy bloke even seems to need to Google him, or whatever the equivalent is in Overwatch world. This is one of the founding members of Overwatch, one of the heroes of humanity, and even more than that, he must at this point be one of the most renowned Swedes alive. Plus this is in Sweden. How does nobody recognise him? He's hardly inconspicuous in how he looks. Have the tales of Overwatch been so sullied by the fall that people would prefer to forget their heroes? Others don't seem to have suffered this fate. Morrison has his statues, Tracer seems to be a hero to kids in at least 2 countries, and there are posters of all of them in places like Dorado. So what's up with Torbjorn? Torb carries a lot of guilt with him, a hell of a lot. We see it here 3 times, when Mr. Trigger Happy asks him if he's fought Bastion units before, again when he mentions his part in creating them, and finally when he says he has enough blood on his hands for a lifetime. Much of this, it seems, stems from his time in the Ironclad Guild, first mentioned fully in his Destroyer comic, where he ran into his former engineering colleague Sven. They were responsible for assisting with the designs of the Titans, and it seems they also lent a hand to SST Laboratories when they were creating the Bastion units. Important to note that neither of these 2 robots seem to have been built with advanced learning and self-improvement in mind. Torb is convinced that Bastions always rigidly followed their protocols. That's what throws him off here so much. Perhaps it was only the creations of Omnic Corporation directly that had this tech, and they merely acquired other units like the Bastions to fight for them along the way. Those protocols are effectively a part of Torbjörn's weaponry here. He helped build them, he has total faith in them, and his plans are entirely reliant on them. It would seem that in 30 years he's never seen a Bastion unit not follow them to the letter, and that's again what throws him off so much here. This is a guy that's dedicated his life to undoing what he perceives to be his own mistakes, and has built a core set of beliefs around that fuel him every day. He keeps waiting for Bastion to live up to his expectations, but to his credit he's remarkably quick to reassess his beliefs when the nature-loving Omnic keeps breaking them. I'd love to know what he's really thinking when he says, "This Bastion is different, and if it can change." Despite having Bastion on the cover, this is really more of a Torb self-discovery story, and I wonder where it'll take him. Check out his face when Bastion gives him the flower, which he then keeps. It's priceless. To finish, a little break from the lore. How cool is the little sphere that Torb uses in this comic? Initially with the goal of disabling Bastion, but in the end being used to save him. It hovers, it's remote controlled, and it packs one hell of a lockdown mechanism in it. That would be a really cool ability to see in game somehow, although that said I have no clue how it would work. Maybe a molten core replacement. Regardless, that's a ball that even Zen would be proud of. Thanks for watching this glance over what you may have missed in this comic. Did you learn anything? Where do you think Torb is taking Bastion, and why? Why does nobody recognise him? And what's up with the weather? Did I miss anything? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like button if you like this episode, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the little bell for notifications on our latest content. Until next time, I've been Kurs, thanks for watching.